presentation. And I'm Chris Wickett with Improving, and thank you all. We've got folks here in person. We've got people online. So thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to have our speakers here, and I apologize, Craig, if you can help with the baton. I am not prepared. I apologize. And
I grew up on a farm.
Yeah.
I did. Big farm, corn and soybeans and,
Yes.
wheat when it was kind of popular back in the day.
I have been so excited about this, and I was thinking I was just participating, not introducing. So I apologize. So if you don't mind.
Not a problem.
Thank you.
So yeah, Chris and I were together at Improving for a few years. And then this pandemic thing happened, but anyway, so I got off the road and went independent, and then I got to work for Turnberry competitor.
Yes.
So there you go. And so gosh, I started with software development, and so I understand software development, which is pretty cool. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, you should be this project manager. Did that for about 3 days. I think it was about 1993, 92, something like that, maybe. I don't know, maybe earlier. And I did that for about 3 days. I went, oh, holy hell no. So I avoided that. And I just continued to build software. Eventually things came out like a manifesto and a Scrum thing. And it's like, well, that just makes sense. Because that's how I was working, oddly. So yeah, I've landed into this transformational work, as well as innovation work, as well as who the hell knows. Everyone says I should write a book. So, but as you know, if anyone know David Hussman?
Yeah,
I worked with David for many years, and people would always ask him that question. It's like, well, when are you going to write a book, dude? And he goes, I'm too damn busy doing this stuff to write a book about it. So I've kind of kept that same mantra, and keep hanging out with clients and doing cool things. So I guess I've been a consultant most all of my life, because most of the times when I've been a salaried employee, it's been for a consultancy. So one time it was Ecolab for about 5 years, running a large transformation there. And then we did a large acquisition, and that just screwed up the whole culture. So anyway, I'll go to David.
Hi, it's David Nielsen. Let's see. I run the Twin Cities Large Scale Scrum meetup. So we usually meet the second Tuesday of every month. I've led 4 large scale Scrum implementations at this point, and have a lot of good learning lessons to share about that, including this one. Let's see. Yeah, I've been a Scrum Master, Agile Coach for about 8 years, and was a business analyst before that. Before that, I was an operation manager and an e-commerce entrepreneur. And really excited today to show or share some pains and gains, or the good, bad, and the ugly of the Agile transformation that we just went through. It was a lot of fun. We had a great team. Craig and Sarah Brown we were like the dream team. It was just amazing. Like Craig brought in all this great product discovery and training expertise, and Sarah was just an all around like great Agile coach, and I brought in some less experience with that too. So we kind of did this. It was really interesting. It's like this intersection of large scale Scrum, product discovery, dual track delivery. And I've always been curious about how that really comes together, and I got to see it firsthand, and it was just full of great learning lessons. It didn't all go great, but there was just, we'll share it all after this. So
well, thank you guys for introducing. I really appreciate it. Again, super excited. We're very blessed that you guys are here. So take it away. Thank you.
Keyboard. We practiced coordinating and handing off slides about for 15 seconds.
We did.
So
20 seconds.
yeah, see how much I figured that out. There we go. Have a introduction, right? And so yeah. So Turnberry, we're in places, we do things that is very similar to say Improving. So let's see here. Solution. Oh gosh, what the heck do we do? Really when you think of, some sort of organizational transformation, cool. Well, I can just transform the organization and I could do nothing inside of it about my products or product strategy. I could do nothing about how we deliver that product or that service. and I could care less about the technical capability of it, but I'll certainly transform, right? So unless you're really looking at all of those areas, right, and then being able to do that, gosh, it's really tough to actually have some sort of a transformation where you can walk away and go, I think that went good, question mark. Otherwise you should
So
like,
this is a,
so, and we do a lot of sorts of things inside of that area, right? Product coaching itself, right? How do you get people to think about a product? And oh my God, it's so most people can't get by the definition of a product, right? Of what is a product. So did you spend money on it? Okay, it's a good idea. Okay, is it providing you some sort of value? Well, yeah, but I'd like to provide me more. Okay, you're working on a product then. In that DevOps space, with that's in software, cool, right? If that's in, compliance, there should be some sort of technical excellence in compliance or marketing and so forth. How well are your marketing programs running, right? Do you automate your marketing itself? It's like, oh, what, automate marketing? What? And the list could go on, right? And leadership and coaching and just a lot of things inside of that world of I'll call it the organization, right? And so we'll go through some of those things. What we did, we laid out this whole thing of like, hey, we're gonna do this transformation in 4 steps, and we'll let you do the 4th. Have fun. So we really came in and looked at, I hate the word assessment, but you need to understand what are they doing right now, right? What cool things are they got going on that we don't want to disrupt, right? What are some of the anti-patterns that they may have and those sorts of things? What are your goals, right? What do you hope to get out of this? I need a transformation. Don't we all? But why? What do you want out of this transformation? What is the pain that you want to deal with? What are the problems that you may have, right? So what does the success, this ideal state look like? What does your organization look like after we run a pilot and you've got, there's a little shining hope, right? How do we know you take that? And so there's all of these sorts of things, transformation playbook and run a pilot, right? So we want to pilot some things. Well, what do we want to do? Well, we're going to change our organizational, model. There's lots of changes in there between ops, talent. How do I help people grow in talent, in product or in technical excellence or whatever that may be, right? Funding. Let's just say that this particular organization, the pains and the wins and the, what do we call it? The
Pains and gains.
Pains and gains. This was painful. They had to do kind of a fixed billing sort of a thing. We have this many people that, thus these teams and so forth. And here's our footprint and we just bill you for that. Okay, thank you. They went back to T&M backwards, right? Not forwards to a product having a P&L, backwards to everyone's like T&M back in entering time cards and all that crap. So that was a pain, definitely not a gain. And so, yeah, we didn't get to play with the funding model, which sucked. Has anyone gotten a product to kind of a P&L world? Okay. I keep asking that question. I'm hoping to find that person and then I'm going to capture them and say, oh, is it chocolate or is it bourbon or something else? Let's just hang out for a while. And then change management.
Closer to the mic.
Oh, right there. Okay, cool. Thank you. I think this one's the mic.
Is that better?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, no, they probably can't hear me.
Let me just check my whatever you call it.
I can hear everyone okay,
You can? Okay, cool.
Okay, cool.
Oops.
but I could before too, so I don't know.
Okay,
There. So
thanks.
alrighty. So yeah, lots of things in there. Coaching model. When we say we're coaching, what does that mean? Right? We're not here to be the Scrum police, right? And that's what we didn't want to be. We didn't want to be the less police either, right? Well, these are fun tools that you can pull out of your, chest of drawers of tools and say and use them to do things with, right? So as coaches, we need to do that right. Professional coaching, training needs. What do they understand? What don't they understand? You'll find that we brought them back to the Scrum basics. Okay, be honest, and if you're online, use the little raise your hand thing on Zoom. Who has read the Scrum Guide, any version. How many online? So they will see that.
2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, quite a few.
Okay, who's read the latest one?
Oh, so like 2020.
2020, November.
Quite a few still, yeah.
Okay.
Lots of hands.
If you're virtual, put in a one or two, just one little thing that you noticed that changed in November of 2020 with the Scrum Guide to the prior guide. And why is that? If you are maybe an Agile coach or you're on a team building things, how's that impact your life? And people in the room, you can just kind of talk about it.
2 were reading it just today.
Huh?
Accountabilities and versus roles.
Yeah, that's a big shift.
Yeah.
Going from a Scrum Master accountability to a role, right? Probably gave the
From a
okay
role.
to aspire a bunch of Scrum Master.
Right.
I think removing it from a role is giving people a cautious to say, oh, we don't need that role. Yeah.
Yeah.
that-
We need a full timer. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, let's see how well.
Try to push teams to goals for the sprint. From way back, and now that it's actually there, the Scrum Guide, so okay, Scrum Guide, so we should do it versus.
In the product goal too, right? That was a new
Yeah.
introduction. That concept, which I actually like a lot because.
Yeah.
We struggle. And one of the things that we piloted with this is, having the teams write sprinkle or derive sprinkles from a product goal, which they didn't have. So first we had to work with the product team to get product goals identified, communicated with teams so they could derive a sprinkle. And what is our tactical step? We got 3 sprints left and get this done. What is the most important thing we have to do each sprint? And that actually spread outside of the boundary of our Agile transformation, like one of the business lines kind of next door neighbor, they heard about us starting to use sprinkles and how we're using that with the product goal as a Scrum Guide suggests to do. And they just started doing it on their own. They're like, oh, that's great. We're just going to start doing that. We don't even need any coaching. So yeah, that's kind of a early.
Yep.
The other comment they made is servant leaders to leaders that serve or true
Yep.
leaders. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, there's been some, cool changes over, especially the last 2 revisions, for me. What I love is it's getting away slowly from just software, right? And so most of my happy place is not in software, even though that's, my, education and so forth. And my first job was really, I think I was maybe in 8th or 9th grade. If you remember the Commodore 64 and the Commodore 128 came out. Cool stuff, 128K memory. And I was writing a art exchange sort of a thing for little tiny local, everyone was dealing with Terry Redlin prints back then. But the 80s. Anyway, that was my first thing. At marketing our journey, right? And so they had other things going along that we were able to hop onto. Right. And so our sponsor who helped us navigate through this, she was amazing, right? And really helped put together some of what were they called? Discovery days.
Discovery days.
Yeah.
We did a bunch of presentations for them, right?
Right. Simple little things, like the Scrum Mythbusters, right? And so there's, all sorts of fun, cool things that you can find out on the internet from, say, like the Liberators or things like that. And we use that from the marketing perspective. It's like, it's myth or fact, right? And of course, it's all virtual. So we're on Miro and it's facilitating that. And then, of course, we found a pilot and ran the pilot, right? That are now responsible for scaling that transformation to the other business lines in that whole product family. Managing risk. So this is where usually the bad things happen, right? Top-down implementation. Yes. We want one playbook, everyone will follow it. There we go. It's like, well, the playbook's going to show them options, how to think. Okay, immutable process and tools. You must use these. We didn't get away from that. It's a large corporation, right? And they're very strict on you shall use this. And in fact, you should use these 2 tools together, but not well. Okay, we'll make it a mystery how these 2 tools actually should work together. At the team level only. Absolutely a pain for us. Leadership and management. We don't need to do this training stuff. We're all good. It's the teams. We need to get the teams to be more agile. So we had to fight through that. Focus on output. Oh my dear God, right? Most organizations always do this. Some very large ones only do that.
Well, and I think on that point, they were looking for during the pilot, because there was this first, where we assess all the different business lines and we figure out which one we're going to do the pilot with. We're going to do it with one business line at first. And we had about 3.5 months to do the pilot. And there was like question, how are we going to track the output of this? So well, we need to do all the training and, spend, several sprints working with these teams, the product owner, the product team, the stakeholders, and we kind of had to break it to them like, you might not see any gains. You might actually see a dip in productivity because we're pulling people away from their normal job to relearn how they're going to do their new job. We're replacing, right? And that comes with a dip in productivity. So that was a little bit of a shock to some people, but ultimately they understood.
Ignoring customers. Oh gosh. There was a change in very top level management, and all of a sudden this idea of zero distance came out, and it was really all about how do we get teams that build stuff with an actual, say it, a customer or whoever, who is really benefiting from this. So that was really promising. I was like, hey, question.
Now, kind of what you're talking about. So how did you do it actually? The big corporations to actually bring real customers and product users. Because it's almost very low probability.
Right.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question is how do you actually get customers, right? So that you can work with. Luckily, a lot of these people, the technology and other services that they were putting together were for internal people that serves the end customer, right? So think of in-home healthcare, right? And so you've got nurses that are taking this technology and care management and so forth and going to somebody's home and saying, okay, hey, I need to do wound dressing and do a med check and so forth, right? So the customer was that person in the car going to say your home, sort of thing. And so we had access to, a lot of those, nurse sorts of people, but not a lot of them, very few, right? And they'd be the same few.
And it wasn't easy. I mean, they're accustomed to working with a business. Or maybe several hops of different business units that would pass along the requirements, right? Instead of actually having that end user, the clinician or the APC who is in the field working with the senior, folks that we had to jump over some people to bring those folks into our discovery process, into our refinement process. And it is uncomfortable for certain people who probably felt like their jobs were being diminished, or the importance of the job were being diminished. But that's the ugly part about it. I would say if there's a good, bad, and ugly. The ugly part is, some of these folks are not needed in the product discovery process. In fact, it's that whole telephone game. If you have kids or they speak in each other's ear. I know you all know this analogy because you're all agile people, but that was probably one of the uglier parts of it.
Yeah, getting real customers. It's been a struggle in many, many places, and happily I've been delighted a few times, right? Different business line in this large company, and we got real people, like strangers on the street people, right? That could identify it, says, yes, I am likely low acuity behavioral health sort of person, meaning I'm just starting to figure out I might be depressed or have anxiety, or, my boss kind of pulled me aside and go, you smell like vodka in the morning. And maybe I want to keep my job, right? And so we got through a tool called D-Scout, which you could sign up for, and you never know, they may find ways to make money, and these people we pay them through it, right? Which is pretty cool. So not only did we get them to look at what we were building, or the prototypes of what we're building, but we got to bring those people in to design sprint sessions. So that's pretty cool. So you can do it, right? It's just, most companies are like, but I don't want to air our dirty laundry. It's like, you can put NDAs out there, come on. So anyway, not like an EDA actually makes you shut up, but anyway, only for IT. Absolutely. The business funded IT to do this, and the business, the IT didn't really want business involved, really. And it's been this, interesting, nightmare. We'll go through some actual fun data where we're taking a look at cycle time from idea to delivery, and where do we find the biggest bang for our buck? I'll let you hang on that one for a bit. All righty.
All right, so, yeah, I was in charge of distributing the agile assessment. We used Lean Agile Intelligence for this one, and essentially we sent out assessments to all of the teams. There was 67 teams in this part of the company, 67 software development or Scrum teams rather. And then there was also teams of products management and as well as other single roles like management and leadership. And we sent out all of these different assessments to kind of get a lay of the land, and confirmed what they had actually hired us for was the problem, is that they were having some lacking results in their product and vision and just product management in general. So what we learned, so these are kind of the statements that we put together through actual quotes when we were doing the subject matter interviews in the beginning as part of that assessment phase. We kind of mashed all these things together into a few statements that you can see on the screen. But it felt kind of validated to know that they hired us for the right thing. Like that we had real data. We went in there, did the surveys, the interviews, everything. There was confluence saying, yeah, these are the things that need to be, that they would like to improve on. And that was our skill set too. So it was a good match.
Yeah. I love a couple of statements, development teams rarely, if ever, meet and understand the users who use the products they build. Oh my God, that would be a nightmare, right?
Kind of hard to have empathy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were hearing things like, at a release demo, like, oh, why did you build it like that? That's going to add another step to a workflow, another 45 minutes to an hour to our day. We're supposed to make our workflow shorter and simpler. You just made it more difficult for us. But it was this being, having the end user being absent from the product discovery and refinement process, and also having UAT 2 days before the release. So there was just a lot of
That's how you should do that.
Yeah.
And you don't only do UAT in a dev environment, okay?
Yeah, I'll spend just a short time in this one. We put together a goal statement, crafted that with them together, improve our speed to market and process inefficiencies by optimizing their entire system. This, goes back to less, focus on the whole system, right? Where all the moving parts adding up to, with a focus on reducing lead times. First, when you release lead time, you can increase adaptability. And zero distance is kind of their buzzword for, hey, how do we remove all these middle people and get the problem finder and the problem solver together in a room and actually solve it like it's a startup or something like that. So so then this would be changing from the old model to the new model. What we kind of simplified this down to is essentially a flow that has an intake, where the intake happens, you put it into a now, next, later roadmap. If there's capital planning that's done, and then we go through these product discovery or modernized product discovery techniques, such as opportunity canvassing, personas, jobs to be done, and user story mapping. So their product management team had no experience with any of these things. They were literally taking orders from a business analyst and
They'd write a capability, write a feature,
write capability features,
stories, and
it's like, your team, go
Of
write
course,
your
those are
user
perfect.
stories by yourself.
yeah, those are perfect, right?
No. And so this model also includes what is referred to by Jeff Patton as dual track delivery, right? So what we're depicting here is the people on the delivery teams actually move up and down. They go and help out with discovery work. So you may have developers joining a persona generation or with a real user, or jobs to be done, or user story mapping workshops. We want the developers and testers, even the most junior person, to go join and be a part of that learning process not necessarily the whole team, but keep a rotation going and keep people in there and empathize with the end user. That was part of our pilot, this dual track, and also this, product discovery techniques. You can go to the next slide.
Alrighty.
Oh yeah, this is.
So in the end,
Another
we
one's with-
What's that?
sure I must have
Another
stepped away
person.
for a little bit. Very good.
Ah,
Cool.
awesome.
So yeah, in the end, the goals, what do you want to achieve? Okay, so reduce lead time. Ooh, that's not a leading indicator. It's more lagging, kind of. But still a cool one, right? Because reducing lead time really helps the satisfaction level of like, okay, I ask for a thing, I'll get a thing, and I kind of know it's not like, oh, we're shrinking it. Okay, cool. Right, increase adaptability. Right, in this world, right, they have, they're the big elephant in the room in this business, and there's a fun tech startups and other things that are starting to disrupt that world. They need to be very adaptable. They need to be able to go and throw that product goal out, put a different one in and go, oh my God, Amazon's eating our lunch, right? And to achieve that zero distance, how do we get our teams that are building things to actually have access to the people that are going to use it and benefit from it? So, different key objectives in here. It was pretty simple, right? Let's get things to people who need it faster, reduce that lead time. Let's get the right things to them, knowing that it's going to change. We can't plan out. I mean, this was a very traditional, safe sort of implementation, right? So on a quarterly basis, you do a PI planning. That's too long for this group. Their life in some areas changes, right? Especially as we learn more and more about elderly care and so forth, which they have a specialty as well in that. So
Are they using SAFe quite a bit in other parts of the org still?
I think most people that start to use SAFe, it's really safe to be safe and stay safe. Isn't that fun? Just imagine if I use the word community with that as well. Wow. And so it kind of stays there. So programming them away, right? So David showed you, talked about, oh, we got to like hit the thing. Let's go back here, right? This was like, right, David, Sarah, really, this is not how we get work done. We write a capability, and the capability lead writes the capability. And then we have features. Those are written by, I don't know, maybe a feature lead. I don't know.
Technical product manager.
Possibly the technical product manager.
Yeah.
But then user stories were written by somebody
The
else.
developers would go write the stories,
Right.
the user stories.
But they're
without a
technical
user
user
in the room.
Yeah.
How the hell do they know what the user
Well, they did-
story is?
Right.
They just
But they
write.
didn't really need to know. It's just implement some database thing, right? Write this line of code, right? That's a user story, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Update data.
so we were asking them to go to a model-based world. Stop writing stuff. Stop writing user stories. Stop. And they was like, what? For example, interesting thing. If for a fact, do you need to use user stories when you use Scrum? No. The answer is no. All you have to have is product backlog items. Doesn't describe how those items are created, right? Or what they are, but you need to have those in a backlog called a product backlog, and you need to order them. Notice the word order, not prioritize, right? And so you could have napkins with Sharpie markers drawn on it. That's cool, right? I remember once in this very room, I was, co-teaching with Tess, and I'm up there doing Scrum on a wall. It's like, oh, well, user stories. Yeah, not so much Scrum, but hey, it's a good practice. Yeah. And I said, what else could you put in your, besides user stories, what else could you put in your backlog? Or you can only put user stories in there. You could put a napkin, you could put a drawing, you could, all sorts of things. They went, no, Scrum doesn't allow that. Okay, let's quick go check Scrum guide here. Yeah, no, we're all good. So putting in diagrams are amazing, right? So I'm building a large, well, it's a large platform in dollar wise. It's a compensation, competitive compensation consultancy sort of a thing. So for hedge funds, PE firms, distressed credit, yeah, lots of money. And so, yeah, we're using that, just pictures and models. Yeah, they want user stories, but the team wants the user stories.
Well,
right? So they can go in and pull these little things apart in this, story map. And then they can kind of get more into that acceptance criteria and what problem are we solving for the user? And all of a sudden you're solving problems. You're not writing stories that say, create this table, add this field to this other table, create this API. Then it's like, no, those are just tasks. Those are just tasks
Yeah.
that you do in sprint planning.
Yeah, this group definitely.
It was tough.
Well, the problem is Rally calls the tool calls everything a user story. Everything starts with US. So they call everything a user story. Then you go in there and nothing's an actual user story or a story about a user. It's just update the API, do some testing, another one for something else. It's just totally defeats the purpose and losing track of.
Basically, a work breakdown structure, that's.
Yeah. There's no, you can't find the customer in any of it. It's just like.
Yeah.
Any kind of like, what kind of your stories, where you need to write a specific way.
Yeah.
User structure.
Yeah.
I was pushing them to write a user story from a user's perspective. Like, how many personas do we have in this feature involved? Who are the people working together to solve a job to be done, if you've heard of those? So that's what we are piloting. We'll get to a slide about that in a little bit, but framing up the work instead of as a feature request, what job is someone trying to do? Who are they? What are the different roles that interact to complete this job for a patient? Right? Let's frame it that way. Let's tell a story about that, and that actually helped them get to smaller PBIs because they just had that at the feature level. And then they'd have all the developers just write a bunch of tasks as user stories. And then like, well, this thing's so big, how can we get the whole thing done in one sprint? We always have things carried over. Well, you don't have thinly sliced, vertical sliced user experiences that we can like.
User experience
Your
slices,
user experiences.
not technology slices,
Not technology.
experience slices. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
So yeah, what did we coach, right? So we have this whole new operating model. We'll get a lot more into what's in that and how we do it, but a big part of that was model-based, work. I mean, yeah, some people used to be able to be in person, but of course, somebody else had to get the new sofa delivered, so they were working from home, or a kid was sick, so they were working from home, right? And so this pandemic thing didn't really change anything. It just helped more people see it all at the same time, that remote work is a reality and we need to know how to do it well, right? So tools like Mural and Miro should just be standard, right? And it's like, we're willing to pay $150 for a Salesforce license, for goodness sake, for our sales teams. How about our people that are building things? How about our people that are creating services? Give them the tools to be creative together and work together when they're not in the same room, which is pretty much always. Even when you are in the same room, bring your laptop and y'all can work together, right? And then you can pop this up there and there's a way you can embed a video camera right into, Miro now. Thank God, they're catching up. They leapfrog. So back to basics. Just enough Scrum and Agile framework, right? Values and principles, just enough. Just read the darn thing. Scrum Guide's 10 pages. If it takes you longer than a bourbon to read it, you didn't pour enough bourbon. No, the playbook, right? Ways of implementing these recommendations, right? Hey, try this, try that. Try something that's not even in the playbook and share your results.
Yeah, we give them like a good 100 playbooks or so, how to facilitate a story mapping session, how to run sprint planning 1 and 2 from less, how to, just, and we, all kinds of things that they could go back and reference.
Yep.
People who like to read and kind of think and study on their own, we give them lots of.
Yep.
What they mean to give an agile framework,
What's that?
because there is no agile framework, but so what they mean.
Yeah. So Scrum framework and Agile.
Scrum and
we
Mux.
should, yeah.
So
Those are the
we
frameworks.
focus on getting back to the basics with Scrum and then introduce some less, implement some of those less principles too.
Yeah, we should maybe have a colon there, right? Just enough Scrum and Agile framework.
Yeah,
values,
that's a little
principles.
typo.
Yeah.
There
Anyway.
you go.
We'll blame David. No, we'll blame Sarah because she's not here. But she's actually the good speller. Yeah, and training and workshops, and then an abundance of just office hours, and those things were therapy, right? I mean,
Those were.
yeah, it was very useful, and creating that safe space was so important, right? In how you do that. and how you protect that space. Yeah, if you can't do that and people kind of go, this is my favorite part of the week. Yeah.
I've never seen such energized office hours, like people were coming in, and we were just talking about, you know, whatever issues they're having with implementing agile product discovery, or just having a place where people can come and talk and share ideas. We didn't always have the answer, but we created that safe space where we just felt safe coming there every Friday and Tuesday, and yeah, you know, bringing those things. So,
We have a question.
oh yeah,
Cool. Go for it.
Did UHG have Scrum Masters? I know you mentioned Agile Coaches on a previous slide.
Yeah, that's the fun thing, you know, with elimination of Scrum Masters, but or just the word or the, you know, the name of the role and so forth. So, you know, they had different HR titles and things, and we tried to get them back to who's accountable for these things, right?
this specific group did have dedicated Scrum Masters still left, but there were other business lines adjacent to us that had let all of them go. There was still I think there's generally across UH, or at least across Optum, a concept of agile practitioners who, like I was kind of sharing before the presentation started, are there to coach the Scrum Master role, which is a developer on a team, how to become a better Scrum Master. I've since moved to another part of the company, and that's how they work. They have APs that look over 3 to 6 teams or so, and there's a volunteer Scrum Masters on each team that they pay to go get their CSM certification, and then we're there to have, you know, weekly or bi-weekly touch points with them and give them our observations and coach them into becoming a better Scrum Master themselves. But I do think it is a trend that where Scrum Masters are becoming a role on the team that is not necessarily a dedicated role. It's like you get 25% of your time to not be doing development work, and you're kind of preparing for retrospective or working to prep, you know, with your product owner to coach them to be.
Engineers love that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They love doing that stuff. But what I really
Yeah,
love
well,
is we're gonna, so this
well, I don't know.
this whole person used to do this,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, if all you're doing is, and I'm gonna say the word very specifically, ceremonies, you're a horrid Scrum Master. What the heck? Right? You're responsible. You're accountable for the effectiveness of the team. Right? That's a really fun sentence right there in the Scrum Guide. You're accountable for the effectiveness of the team. And if all you do is schedule some meetings, that is not making the team effective.
Yeah,
So,
they're really not laying off Scrum Masters, they're laying off project managers who have been relabeled Scrum Masters. Most of these people that I've interacted with over the years have never read the Scrum Guide. They like reference something like, and they're like, what's a Scrum Guide? I read something on Jira.com about what a Scrum Master is or something. I thought that was the Scrum Guide. It's absurd.
So they've never shown up for one of these.
And nobody likes templates, but I'm just saying, like, we have something to, some basis.
yeah, it's always, I want to say, I mean, I don't want to do the Scrum Police, but it's so small. It's like, oh, hey, on a daily basis, would you like to get together and kind of coordinate? Who'd say no? Hey, at the end of a period of time, would you like to get together and talk about how you could do some things better and work together better? Who says no? Okay, you get the idea.
Yeah, so I won't spend too long on this slide. It's a good graphic though. The actual pilot teams did these calculations. We went through a value stream analysis and cut out a lot of fat, a lot of handoffs, especially the dual track delivery where there's not really a handoff anymore. We're all participating as a group to do the discovery work. But ultimately this ended up increasing or 6 times faster for cycle time, 4 times less effort, and 8 times less waste by their own admission, not our calculation. This is what I mean, we kind of forced them to do it, like, hey, we need to sit down and do a value stream analysis here. And they're like, okay, well, how long does it take to do document a business case or decide whether it fits in our strategy or add it to the next later roadmap or place in the backlog? About a week. And then what about the product discovery work? Choose or create personas, create jobs to be done, create a story map, slice out the releases. You know, maybe do a high level solution intent or estimation, write some user stories, about 4 weeks. And, the actual time here to do that work, this is kind of duration versus elapsed time, but they calculated this, and this is what they came up with. So, we were really happy about that, and that's why we want to make a case study about it.
I mean, it's impactful, right? 6x faster, right? You look at 64 weeks, idea to delivery versus 11. It's a game changer when you've got other people scratching at your door trying to take your business away. Maybe Amazon usually, right? And so, but it's been interesting because United Health has had their business attacked by Amazon multiple ways and times, right? They tried to actually get into the health care plan business, right? Virtual business and so forth. And they were doing it and they made a name for themselves, right? And in fact, United Health as a board, United Health group, freaked out. Said they are a viable competitor. They're not huge, but see that growth? You see, right? You see now employers are going over there. Oh, hell, right? And so they freaked out. So what they do? They call Christy Henderson, who had been running the Amazon stuff, and goes, "What's your number?" And then I got to work with Christy as she came over, right? And she goes, "Craig, I gave them the number," and they said, "Okay, I think I left some money on the table." It's like, "Yeah, you did."
About 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So I'll just breeze through these. Yeah, we piloted, user story mapping, personas. We can go to the next slide. This is an image of what was new. So basically all of this is new. When you saw that back to the basic slide with Scrum and less, it was basically standing up requirement areas that were customer centric. So each requirement area was not around a layer of the technology, but around a user or a customer that we're serving, right? Whether it's a clinician or APC or different this or that, right? And then we stood up Sprint Planning 1, which is a concept from Large Scale Scrum. Overall sprinkle determined, teams select work based on sprinkle, based on demand, and team level sprinkles are drafted. They go and do their Sprint Planning 2. So it's this whole merge, diverge, or rhythm and flow kind of pattern, which is what less is all about. So they split off, do their Sprint Planning 2, which is discussing the how they're going to accomplish their sprinkles. And then they come back together at the end, do the sprint review together to create that whole product focus. The reason why we come back together in less is to create that whole product focus. So teams are not losing track of concurrent feature work that is going on the same product, right? When you hear about teams complaining about, I don't know what other teams are doing. Les tries to solve that by bringing folks back together for sprint planning and sprint review. Demos by feature in a team, review the sprint goal, review progress toward the next goal, product goal, so on and so forth. And then teams do their retrospectives. Those weren't happening. You wouldn't believe it. None of these things are happening. They were just literally just kind of going through the motions of, they had like a bi-weekly release that they were beholden to, and they had project managers trying to make sure that they released it so they stayed green with everything. Just releasing crappy code into production. It was a disaster when we got there. And this brought some sanity, some structure to the whole process. So you can go to the next slide. And please, if you have questions, you can interrupt. I'm just trying to make sure we get through a good deal of content with the last 13 minutes.
How long is the session? Is it until 6? Yes, or? Anyone else? I don't know. Okay, 6 or 6:30. Okay.
We'll go with that, and then
Yep,
if we
we'll
could go longer, we will. But yeah, so again, getting to
6:30.
6:30.
oh really?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay, well, I'll slow down a little bit.
So 6:30 online.
Awesome. So one of the other parts of the pilot that we introduced were product goals, sprint goals. We're deriving what the sprint goals are for the different teams in the different requirement areas from the product goals. So the product goal, we coach them to write in business language, something that's inspiring, something that you could verify as complete at some point, and change directions afterwards. So we're working toward, making these statements a reality with each sprint, and each sprint goal is to describe in business language what we're going to do with this sprint tactically to move us that much closer to the product goal. And that's what we derived our sprint scope from, the features and the user stories. So we pulled those in based on what the sprint goal ended up being. So that created a lot of alignment, and this was like an image, this is a real image from one of the sprint plans. We would pull this up and show this to the teams, the sprint plan one, we had all the teams there. So everybody understood who's doing what and why they're doing it, right? So
The sprint goal 13. Right?
we did, but they're derived from that requirement area's product goal. Yeah, yeah.
We do have a comment online. Can you cover how you used AHA for the intake of product backlog? I have a situation where we're using PPT,
Oh,
Okay.
and if you need to come back, but.
So I think the intake process
Yeah.
was that new requests. They had a landing page in their AHA and had some required fields to fill out. And I think
Yep.
we're suggesting some more fields that would help
Correct.
them.
Yep.
Maybe you could. add
Yeah,
more.
and so what we did was look at, why can't we actually have the person that's asking for these things, actually tell us what they want and what they hope for and what they're dreaming and why they're dreaming that and those sorts of things. Before they just had them write like a title and maybe a paragraph, and then they all guessed at what was going on. And it's like, how about we structure that, form a little bit more and asking for some things that you all end up asking them anyway, which is taking you inordinate amount of time to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, right? And so they started getting things that were well composed, which was pretty cool. So think about how you're doing your intake. What are the types of questions? What is your problem space, right? You got a bigger problem space, right? So this is basically home health care, as well as just I'm elderly and I need to move from this type of facility to another facility that has a level of care that I need at this point in my life, right?
And expose it to real users, and they were able to see all the requests and then upload them.
Yeah. So there would be on the clinician side and the business side, you remember Vince?
Yeah.
Yeah. So some of those people that really generate those ideas that use that intake to say, hey, I need a way to do this, right? And really asking them, what problem are you trying to solve versus what feature do you need?
Mhm.
I don't know, right? One of my clients, it's a law firm out in New York, and they've never built custom software themselves. It's a law firm, right? They configure everything, right, and buy it, and they're like, and we got a very safe minded person, and it's like, okay, what features do you need? All right, and this, it's like, no, Michelle, we do this differently. Let's talk about what problems they want to solve. And okay, and it was much better.
Yeah, so as part of the back to the basics of Scrum, Sarah and I were embedded with the Scrum teams, working with them day to day. Just at first observing, and one of the things that we observed is what we were seeing is their sprint planning and their daily scrums look like what you see on the left here, where the developers are giving a status to the Scrum Master and to the technical product manager, and they weren't really putting a plan together for the day. If you kind of know what the nuance is, right? You can either give your status or you can put a plan together for the day. They sound similar to the untrained ear, but they're quite different if you've been in these situations. So I put this graphic together just to hey, let's come up with some experiments to try. I'm noticing it's kind of a status meeting. Maybe we can turn it into a planning meeting. And they loved it. They're like, this is great. And I was saying, we're not eliminating your role or anything. We just want you to maybe take a step back, listen, do active listening, ask questions, but let the team actually work as a team and come up with a plan for the next day. So that was an experiment that went really well. Everything's framed as an experiment. We don't have to do it after a sprint if you don't like it, but this stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
they like that.
Yeah.
And then they don't call it an extra meeting. It's an actual meeting they are using.
Right.
Well, we were
Get stuff done.
we got rid of several meetings, and collapsed that into the Scrum events. We just kept asking, is there a meeting for that? Oh, we have a sprint review. Maybe we don't need a go, no go. Maybe we could have that in the sprint review, or things like that, which.
Good old Ryan Ridley's, there's an event for that.
About leadership kind of beyond Scrum Master.
Roadmap review, do you really need that? Can you do that in the sprint review? Yeah, you can.
It's a good back on some metrics because I'm probably used to get daily or weekly updates on how team doing. What was the response? How did you put them back to real world?
Oh, that was a question.
Yeah,
Right, can you repeat your question?
So, probably somebody beyond Scrum Master and Product Manager, that's for some metrics, because there were the extra services, the stuff was going up and up and up. So how did you work with them to eliminate this need for them to get those updates?
You put them in the sprint review. Yeah, how do you get the team able to respond to the endless question of metrics, right? And so forth. Minimize the number of metrics, one. If you're not going to use it, if you're not going to make a decision on it, throw it out.
Yeah.
Don't measure it. Don't even measure it for historical stuff. Just get rid of it, right? And then, you know, the other side of it is put it into not a random like email, right? Do that in the sprint review, right?
Yeah.
And then, hey, I don't know the answer to that question. You're asking me some measurement sorts of things that we don't measure. So, you know, hey, why don't we bring that to our retrospective and talk about how we might value that and maybe do it or maybe not. Right.
And on that slide you saw with the goal, the product
The goal,
goal,
we had 3 goals.
sprint goal, and then the
Right.
sprint scope. When you replace velocity with goals, have you read the book Measure What Matters by John Dewar?
Yep.
Okay, so it's a different conversation answering, oh, our velocity is 80 and it was 75 last time. Who cares? What's our next product goal?
Right.
What's a current sprint goal? How are we doing completing our sprint goals? Do we usually complete them or not? Like giving them a confidence level where we're gonna complete this sprint. That's really all you need, right? It's the rest of it's for guys. Right? I mean, we got that point across.
And I think this fancy camera gets the drawing I have. Let's say this is some sort of an epic or something, right? And then you've got user stories underneath it. Cool, right? And if I have a wall of some sort, I don't know, maybe it's a RAID information reader, like, oh, some sort of thing in Jira or Rather we're supposed to do. This one's done, this one's done, this one's done. How done is that? 3/5 done. So when you get that visualization, don't give me measures, give me something visual. This goes back to, you know, our product thinking and discovery. Do that through models and pictures, right? Stop with the numbers. Numbers don't really matter at all.
And actually, we don't need the 4th one, so we're really closer.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, that was
Remember that. Okay, cool. We're almost done.
But you can only do that when you get to the user-centric PBIs, right?
Yeah.
If those are all a required part of the architecture, you can't do that. You have to deliver all 5 of those.
Right. Yeah,
So,
so every one of them needs to be a thin slice of the technical stack itself. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Progress. Cool. We have lots of progress. You know, you saw the reduced lead time 6 times, right? That's pretty darn cool, right? You know, when you look at 0 distance, we did some things around measuring, like when's the last time you actually talked to a user, right? Sort of self-reporting. Gosh, that's humbling. And then if that's been a while, it's like, how do I get to these user people? And then increasing adaptability. David, do we actually implement, you know?
yeah, we implemented a definition of done, which increases your adaptability by having an actual done increment. You can pivot to the next sprint. And for the release, we help them define that through like a workshop, a collaborative workshop. And let's see, multi-team product backlog refinement. The teams are already sort of doing this, believe it or not. Within their sort of requirement areas, the shift was that we redefine the product areas around customers. Leadership alignment to reduce organizational whip. That sort of happened, but they got the message was, you know, if you have too many features or capabilities or whatever we're calling progress, the teams are not going to work together as a unit. They're going to be running off in their own direction after their own goal, locally optimizing. So, had a lot of conversations about that. And then mid-sprint feedback, bringing the customers and users into the sprint, working day to day with the developers.
And we,
Story mapping.
yeah, we did start looking at some of the metric around how do we know adaptability is increasing, right? And so part of that, of course, is your backlog churn, right? Where something was really high and you moved it down, right? And then something new came in. And so tough to really do without some really cool tools, which we didn't have access to. So that's the next transformation, to actually be able to tool that so you can visually see adaptability, right? So
And all of this is kind of connected to adaptability, because really, when you think about, when you reduce lead time by reducing
I get more
handoffs,
choices.
you have less in your hopper, you can drain your backlog faster and pivot onto something else sooner, right? And that comes from being at zero distance with your customers, right? If you're at zero distance with your customers, you can solve problems faster, reduce your lead time faster, and if you're able to pivot faster, right? It's not about just going faster, it's about,
Actually
being able to have taken a new opportunity
Yeah.
sooner, right? So
yeah, and
it's all
Or-
related.
cool. So, we put together a playbook, it's basically published on everyone's favorite SharePoint. It's different documents, pretty lightweight, very closer to Scrum itself, and things like that. So, and as David said, everything from how do you, do an opportunity canvas or a business model canvas, or, how do you do an empathy map on a persona? How do you create a persona? How do you take the jobs to be done? And how do you give those individual jobs empathy themselves, right? Of why are we doing this? Imagine, a caregiver or a clinician that, oh, I got to go do wound care management. And we provide them technology, like physical technology, as well as, wound care things, bandages, etc. And if we don't have empathy for what doing that job is for that clinician and understand that social and emotional role that job plays in that clinician's life, we're going to miss the mark, right? So everyone talks about empathy about the persona. How about empathy for the job being done by that persona? Some jobs are easy and we love to do them. Some jobs suck and we avoid them. How do we change that? So important things to do. So I'll let you talk to this one, but just looking at,
we did an exercise with the people in the pilot. How are we going to measure, have them brainstorm our idea? How are we going to measure getting to zero distance? How are we going to measure increasing adaptability? How are we going to measure reducing lead time? They came up with the ones you see in black text here, incorporating customer feedback mid-sprint to increase adaptability. So they're going to start marking their stories whether they're getting mid-sprint feedback or not on that, and trying to, and not saying we have to hit some number, but let's baseline it, see where we're at, and how can we improve that? How can we show we're getting customer feedback mid-sprint, right? So they're going through there and using some field of the tool to capture that, increasing customer interactions. That's just kind of an overall throughout the whole process, not just mid-sprint, but beforehand, like refinement, product discovery, right? So how many times are we touching, a customer is actually touching these items or having a conversation with us, dialogue. Reducing WIP, reducing lead time. That one's pretty self-explanatory. If you're familiar with Little's Law, or the theory behind Kanban, you want to reduce your WIP to reduce cycle time, lead time. And then customer reported defects and quality, of course, that's kind of an easy one, and this isn't what they ended, this is their very first sprint of capturing information. When we check back with them a sprint or two later, oh yeah, these screenshots are old. So what you see here is just like, we're encouraging, it's not gonna be perfect, just get started with it, just start tracking it. Because when the teams know you're tracking these sort of things, that, oh, this is what matters now, not my velocity. How many times I'm interacting with the customer in a sprint to make sure we're building the right thing is what matters. Oh, okay. So that the actual graphics are not as important as the message that, hey, we're tracking zero distance and decrease lead time and things like that. So yeah. All right. So after the pilot was over, or near the end of the pilot, we did another round of Lean Agile assessment tool surveys that went out and asked teams questions about how they feel their agile practices and product management, product discovery practices, and DevOps, and all these things. DevOps wasn't really a focus of our transformation, but it was part of the survey, so we'll see that on there. Across the teams that were part of the pilot, there were 6 Scrum teams in this pilot. Their average score went up 16%, which everybody wants to see like a 10x, you know, but 16% is actually pretty realistic. In a 3-month time span, right? We were only there with these specific teams for 3 months. The whole transformation was about 7 or 8 months.
Yeah.
But that was part of it, was doing a lot of training across many business lines at first. So these teams made a good improvement. Product division up 32%, measurements up 26%, sustainable pace up 26%. They did have some gains in other items. Product discovery up 18%. So those are some wins that we're pretty happy. So we had some data to back it up. It wasn't just the coaches' assessments. We feel like they did improve on our own, but this kind of buttressed that with some data from the actual team members who are on these Scrum teams. And then we also did a MS Forms survey about what did you think about the pilot? Would you recommend, questions more like, based on your experience in the pilot, would you recommend implementing business agility practices, including product discovery, customer centricity, Scrum and less fundamentals and events within other teams? And most people said yes. 23 said yes, definitely. 6 with reservations, and 0 said not at all. And by the way, blue means yes on here. So if you kind of look at the pie charts, blue is yes. So very effective, or yes, significantly. So we had some good data, another good data point for the teams. So yep. So what we found was that between the Lean Agile assessment, the coaching dashboards, which we build out as coaches, working directly with the Scrum Masters to coach their teams, and also the MS Form, is that there were improvements across the board in terms of the pilot goals that we're going after. Your final recommendations. So we sat together for a few days and put together our final recommendations for them. We found that one of my biggest complaints is when we got there was no product taxonomy. There was no understanding of what is our product. We had business lines and we had technologies. We have multiple business lines wanting the same thing from a technology, and they have different roadmaps, different product owners. I think I have a slide for this, so I'm not going to drink that.
This one.
Yeah, actually, let me stay on this one for a minute. One of our recommendations is shift UAT left. Instead of having an external dependency, something that's handled by an outside group a couple days before a release, shift that left into your refinement. Bring those UAT people or actual real customers and identify your acceptance test in your refinement, right? And then you don't have to surprise the developers. Oh, we're going to do this UAT scenario, this UAT scenario.
Develop.
Yeah, actually develop to the tested scenario that they.
Yep.
We need to get away from this, surprise the developers at the end and tell them they did a bad job.
Right.
That's just not fair. It just makes everyone's life suck, right? We'll go to the next one. Release on demand. So they were releasing on a cadence, and they have project managers say we're going to go yellow or red if we don't release on this cadence. And it was resulting in poor code being pushed to production just for the sake of staying green. When the clinicians in the, we have a head clinician there, like, no, I don't want this to go to production. This is going to add an extra step to our workflow, another 45 minutes to our day. And the project managers are arguing with them, no, we need to put this in production. It was just, so what we recommended is they move toward that release on demand, where we build up some valuable code, and when the business is ready for it, or the users are ready for it, the clinicians, when they're ready for it, they think it's done, they say, okay, give it to us.
There's value here. Bring it.
Yes, exactly. And it was also subtracting from the value of the Scrum events too. It's like, well, why have Scrum events if you just have a release cadence? We'll just live and die by the release cadence.
Right. Gross.
Yeah, so another thing is that, hey, start measuring your outcomes, right? Document your business case. a lightweight business case up front, what kind of benefits you think you're gonna get. Part of refinement, come up with a measurement plan. Don't leave refinement without saying, how are we gonna measure this, right? Because otherwise it won't get done, right? And then, after go to production, validate that the desired outcomes actually occur with the users in the business.
Yep.
And then that information, provide that feedback.
So do you do start, stop, pivot? Do you do like benefit hypothesis statement and
Yeah,
MVPs? And
yeah, we introduced those sort of concepts to them, yeah,
I think it's still new for that group.
pretty neat for that group, but just something.
They're lucky to be developing software, so, I mean, so, yeah, as we get them more into that product world.
Yep.
So that's the next phase for them, right? So, yeah, given we were only there for what, 7 months, getting to that spot takes a lot of time and discipline. And leadership
In partnership.
actually wanting that,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
We do have a question. What was the name of the assessment tool again?
Lean Agile Intelligence,
Thank you.
Michael McCullough runs that group, and there you go.
Check it out.
It's indeed a thing. Did you put automation in
I
there?
think Sarah put automation in this one.
Okay, they just like it even automates between the slides. That's just a little concerning.
Yeah,
But
so this one, at this specific company, they track time to value. Time to value sounds great, but they also make use of dark code or feature toggles. And because there's a bottleneck, a training bottleneck to train the clinicians on how to use the software, it was pretty common to see code sit in production toggled off for 3 to 6 months. So, but with the time to value stops when you enter in a production date for that feature. So as soon as you put it in production, woo, time to value. But it's sitting there for 3 to 6 months. Nobody's using it. So it's just another Fugazi type of vanity metric that they were going after. And what we suggested is that they address that issue. Either put the production date into the feature when you turn it on in production, which highlights that bottleneck of training. We need to figure out training. How do we train people to use this? Because the teams were able to go much faster than the end users could actually consume. So
Well, that's an okay problem to have, I guess.
it is until you get into that lean waste of
Okay.
production.
Ah.
Right? So that's not good either, right? Yeah, so another thing is, hey, we got the leadership team to agree on this new operating model, but as we were walking out the door. The teams are implementing less than large scale scrum, but in terms of like that whole flow of, hey, we're gonna shrink this down from 64 weeks down to 11 weeks or whatever. That part needed to be communicated to every person on the team. Like if you're gonna expect them to be involved with dual track delivery, where the developers on the team are gonna start working on product discovery stuff too. They need to hear that. So we're like, hey, make sure you share this new operating model with everybody on the team. Have a dialogue with them. Don't make them do it. Bring them to the table and say, we'd like your partnership in this new operating model. So.
yeah, and they have some success to point to. So, and that was our tough thing, because we were asking this first pilot group, believe us. We've seen it happen. Right, Craig, right, David, right, Sarah, sure, Agile coaches. And so yeah, that is, getting your first customer to leave behind that old way of doing things, which is so safe. And go to something else is tough. And so,
For example, instead of you writing your user stories, and I'm using air quotes because they're not really user stories, instead of you doing that as a team with no customer in sight, we're going to be inviting you to product discovery meetings. So like, please go communicate that to your teams that this is going to happen. Make a big deal about it. Get people excited about it, right? So they ended up doing it. Just so.
You continue kind of supporting them after you left. They're still coming back and making sure that they continue in the practice. We did hire somebody to be kind of less coach who's there.
So we left them in very good hands. Our sponsor there, she was a very capable Agile coach. She brought us in because it's just a very big effort. But she's there working directly with the coaches. And we also stood up internal coaching capabilities within this group. So we
Coaching
turned their
coaches.
scrum masters into coaches, like,
Yeah.
like Sarah and I and Craig, we worked with them very closely to teach them what is coaching and coach them while they're coaching other people, like a proper, you know, triangle of coaching of the actual team. And I mean, I think they're gonna do really well. We were there long enough to see them doing this for a few sprints. And
Yep.
they had worked through a lot of the kinks.
Yep.
And they had actually went to bat against some of the other groups that were getting kind of cut out of the process because we didn't need them anymore. And so we saw them actually saying, no, this is our new way of working. So it was, I felt pretty confident leaving that group in good hands. Not only did they have a very competent agile transformation coach, but
yeah,
their internal people.
Yes,
stood up.
and they got used to coaching as a professional coach, right? You know, not the whole, make sure they're following the Scrum guide. It's really more, you know, a humanistic approach, right? So if you've been to any other sorts of, you know, coaching by, you know, oh gosh, there are many coaching, you know, outfits out there where you can get certifications and whatnot, but so as you're looking at personalities and communication and you know, getting people to work well together and those sorts of things, that's important. Actually creating a coaching plan, right? And working that plan with the people, the team, whoever you're coaching. So, and giving them that safe space to do it, and that actual coaching agreement. Yeah, very important.
This one I won't spend too much time on, but there was essentially a level of project managers and business analysts that were in between this, you know, the developers and the actual end users or people who submitted the request. So we suggested we need to empower the teams to make decisions and to meet directly with customers or withhold a release if the quality isn't good enough. So, you know, who cares if it goes red? Some of the project line goes red. If it's not quality, let's not put it out there.
Yeah.
Stop and fix.
Yeah.
Or why have a go, no go?
Do I have a go, no go? You
If
can't
it's
say,
go, no matter
you can't
what.
call it
You
the
can't say
elephant in the room.
Right. Oh, and the people that are making the go, no go decision are the least qualified to make that decision, but hey,
Yeah.
we made sure of that for decades.
To address the training, bottleneck that I described earlier, where the clinicians have to do, they have to have pages printed out, sent to them. They get on a virtual call, they go through the training with the thing, and they spend hours and hours and hours doing this. And it takes 3 to 6 months to really have something that's in production flipped on. To address that bottleneck, what we suggested was look into Pendo or WalkMe or one of these sort of in-app training. So like, think about your favorite app. Maybe you use Spotify or Pandora. You go in there and you haven't used it in a while. There's some pop-ups that show, hey, there's some new features since you last put in here. Here's how to use it, right? Something to that effect to help people help the clinicians understand, reduce the training burden of printing out a bunch of materials and having them come to some class. What I helped them write a business case to get funding for something like this. And that was like within the last couple of weeks of our engagement there. But yeah, hopefully that they got this going, because that was like the biggest slowdown.
Yeah.
One of the biggest slowdowns of actually turning the code on.
All we have left is appendixes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess we could take questions. We got 10 minutes. Anybody has any questions?
Online.
What kind of body was implemented to labs? How did you identify this new product, or two product of the all kind of different teams and how they work? And transition from safe. What was your process of changing people's mentality from one framework to another?
Well, I think we started with, why. We talked with, senior leadership first and helped to.
Rephrase.
So I think the question was, how did we change the mentality and get the teams and leadership comfortable with the less framework
And then with,
and moving from more of a safe type of model? I don't know if I would call it safe, not in a sense that they conducted PI planning. They didn't conduct PI planning. They had more of a release cadence, and they were beholden to their release cadence. The release cadence gods commanded them to do things.
You shall release.
Yeah, and yeah. So I wouldn't characterize it as safe, but what was new for them, the new elements of it were, hey, we're gonna have sprint planning together, all the teams for like 30 minutes and talk about whatever team's doing. Same thing with sprint review. We're gonna have a longer sprint review. We're gonna get all the teams together. You're gonna see feature by feature by feature, no matter which team worked on it, and see what's going on. And the teams are asked questions, because now each team is a stakeholder of the other teams, because we have a shared code base, right? So just helping, just talking through what are we optimizing for? What are the optimizing goals? And that's where we had those slides where we talked about what we're trying to optimize for in this pilot. We didn't come up with those. We asked them, what is important to you? And through conversations, we crafted those optimizing goals. And then once the leadership is agreeing, yeah, we need to increase adaptability. It does sound pretty good. I can see some examples that, you know, our people are bringing to us of how our framework is too rigid. Or, yeah, it looks like we have 64 weeks of lead time to deliver something. That's not acceptable. Once we got them to agree on what the optimizing goals are, then we can have conversations about introducing the less framework, right? If you just lead with, I think multi-team product backlog refinement is great. They're gonna be like, well, great, who cares? What problem does it solve? But when you start with, what are we optimizing for? What are we gonna optimize our system for? And when you think of a framework as a system, or a team of teams as a system, then the conversations get easier about implementing a particular framework or not. And I was totally happy with implementing some other framework. It just depended on what they all aligned on, what their optimizing goals are. Because SAFE is good for optimizing for secrecy, right? No, some of you might be laughing, but if you have to keep secrets between teams or military or something like that, SAFE's probably a better model for it. Or if your organization is extremely rigid and there's no way we can reorganize, use SAFE, but don't try and use less. Half your people are going to quit. Your attrition rate will go through the roof if you try and implement less, if it's for the wrong reason. So it's pretty serious stuff. And that's why it gets scary when they do lay off a lot of Agile people who do know what they're talking about, because Agile is like a lightsaber. You can do a lot of good things with it. You can also like cut your head off in like 2 seconds with it. So like trying to like try out these different frameworks without having an optimizing goal, what you're optimizing for, can lead to a lot of scary silliness. Yeah. Or heads rolling.
Yeah.
We have another question.
More questions.
Yes, I don't know, can you see it or do you?
Yeah, I should. Here, I can put it up.
I can do it. Can you talk more about coaching coaches? What were some of the things focused on? What did you, see that made you feel good about the coaches you were coaching?
Yeah, so when we're coaching coaches, we're focusing on them while they're focused on what problems they're admitting that they have. So if their teams are admitting to them, our product backlog refinement process sucks, or we don't have enough work ready for sprint planning, I'm not giving that person the answer. I'm saying, so what have you tried so far? What could you try next? And so those sort of questions. And then also we did training, which is explaining that process, right? Like maybe Craig could probably articulate this better on the fly, the visual, but
Yeah.
So we had
different modules, right? And if you're looking at the share screen here, really it's, how coaching, enables Scrum, and we have different exercises, really, looking at people, right? And so looking at personality and preferences and values and how do we actually incorporate some of these values in. The next one is really around that coaching framework, right? What is my relationship with this team, with the people in the team, right? What is the value of coaching? Why do I deserve my job? what am I doing for this team and doing this, right? Putting it all together, coaching skills, active listening, self-management, powerful questions.
This is a syllabus of training that they went through, just to, so you know.
Yep. And so some things were read ahead, so that 2 hours of video or reading ahead, and then some exercises to kind of reinforce some of that or really dive deeper in. Let me go to the other column. All right, and so this is, within the team context, to understand self-organization. How do you promote that? How do you let that, survive, right? Moving, from, so this is empowerment, dynamic, right? So that it was, yeah, it was a good thing. I think this is maybe one of the favorite things, right? So it's, the Power of TED book. It is really good, right? And coaching in the organization, really, this is, tackling, or we spent the whole 2 hours tackling organizational impediments as a coach. Those are a lot, right? And then we had kind of the reflection, back through each one of these things. So
your engagement was 8 months total?
Yeah.
How much of it were you spending with the coaches? Like, of doing the training, like, was that throughout the entire period?
yeah. So it was every other week we had the classroom, right? And then in the middle, right, the other alternating weeks was basically office hours, right? So they could take the things that they were reading.
2 hours
so
a week, 2 hours a week, 2 hours a week, alternating, just like, which is great, because you do some training modules, right? And then in the off week, they come in and they talk about how they've been putting that into practice.
Yeah.
So,
And how it's working for them or not? Yeah.
whether it's working for them or not, or like troubles they ran into trying to implement something.
Yep.
That was good. Were there more questions? Just curious.
No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
And Vernon asked that question. So Vernon, we can chat later. So
Vernon,
we will work with Vernon. Yeah.
Oh, Vernon, what's up there?
So curiosity question, how long were the sprints that you guys implemented with these teams? Like 1 week sprints or?
They're all 2 week sprints on the same cadence already when we got there.
That was a comfortable length for them?
Think so, yeah.
I think so. Shorter would be tough, I think, just from their tooling and
You
things.
just use rally. You just rally.
Rally and aha for until you can rally for.
Oh, so I have a
So
tool,
no-
not just an aha moment, okay.
Oh, I-
I learned something.
Oh, that's what they, yeah, I would.
So to integrate, so.
Yeah, bi-directional integration.
You did like aha or?
No, I don't like.
No.
Okay, so don't get excited about it.
Some people live and die in aha, their whole life is in aha, so I don't. If anyone's on the
Anything
phone, I'm
that
sorry.
manages and makes it a better way to create a list, I just generally hate. I just do. It's like, God.
Really?
Any other questions?
What didn't you like about aha?
Oh, what didn't I like about aha?
No, what did we?
Oh, what did you like?
What did you not?
Did not,
Oh,
what did the
did you not?
negatives? What did you, go ahead, what do you?
Well, I was gonna say what I did like. I mean, the reality of it is you can take some of this discovery stuff and you can pop it right in there, right? The other thing that you can do is really tie it together, right? And so if you're gonna actually put together some sort of a, hey, here's an actual cool way of seeing, are we making a difference, right? Are we actually obtaining those outcomes, right? So we talk about, the leading versus lagging indicators. Are we actually increasing the level of health? Are we actually driving utilization down, which means you have healthier patients? You can do that, right? By looking at what are these individual little pieces, right, that all contribute to that. But that presupposes a good idea of a measurement plan. And most people think OKRs are a wonderful thing. Well, they can be, but they can also be gained, right? And they really don't help you understand what kind of measures and balancing those things. So there's another thing that I like here called EBM, evidence-based management, right? And so you can find the details on scrum.org, and that really talks about, future value, current value, ability to innovate, right? And there are measurements inside of those. Some are generally standard for the industry of whatever you're in. And then there are some things that are very specific, right? So if you're in the financial industry, how many products do you own, right? Wells Fargo wants you to have how many products? As many as you can, right? They are built into us, they can never escape. They've got both autos, a home, a cabin, student loans for the kids. Oh, the list goes on. Everything is Wells Fargo. If I want to leave Wells Fargo, my life will be hell. Right. But that's what they want. It's a multi-product ownership. Right. So, oh, they've got life insurance through Wells Fargo. Who knew? But Wells Fargo sold life insurance.
What I didn't like about AHA is that, well, not just this, like the screen is a super busy, but what it creates a divide. There seems to be, wherever I go in these sort of companies, there will be people who work in AHA, product people work in AHA, teams work in Rally or Jira. And it just enshrines the handoff and us versus them. And I've just never seen anything good coming from, I don't have an alternative for you, but I could just say that it does create an us versus them thing. Like, there's your playground, here's our playground. When it's one product backlog, right? That's someday we'll have a new solution.
The other part of that question around what didn't you like about was, or, what you used for a better tool. And I think some of the things that we did is, instead of using Rally to do sprint planning, we did it in Miro.
Yeah.
Right? We
We
dropped-
started doing sprint planning in Miro this group. It was great.
you just drop it there, you can have little tags.
Post-it notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just a virtual whiteboard.
Yeah.
Just.
And you come up and you went, oh, it's time to task, right? Create the plan, right? Okay, cool. Just what are all the things that we need to do to get to our definition of done? You can post your definition done right on the top there. It's like, you have any questions about what that is? Huh? Oh, it's right up there. And so that is, and when you look at how do you put a product goal and our current sprint goal, in a tool like Jira or Rally or version 1 or any of those tools, they all suck. They absolutely suck. So this is my favorite, the whiteboard, right, with Post-it notes and Sharpies. If I can't have that, give me Miro, something like that.
Did you integrate Miro with Rally?
So I showed them, I demoed how to integrate it, and oh, this is super cool. I didn't see them like go 100% with it, but yeah, like you could, there's like a little integration thing, and it would pull all the tickets from a sprint backlog or a product backlog, whatever, and it just plop them onto the whiteboard, and it was pretty neat. I mean, I would have, if I was, operationally running one of these or working with one of these things, I would be making use of it for sure. But the integration works pretty slick. Yeah. So very low effort. So, pretty good.
I tried to do it with Jira, but engineers, and it's a waste of time. They just will do it with Jira.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about Jira is only one person can be productive. Everybody has to watch the one person work.
Right.
It's not a collaborative experience. It kills Jira and Rally and version 1. They just kill collaboration.
Right.
That you can only really have at a whiteboard or virtual.
Yeah. I've gotten my current team out of, a client in New York, and the team is all over, and that's virtual, but it's like, nobody is allowed to share Jira. It's like no sharing screens at all. What? We are having a conversation. If you need to go, we're hopping into the backlog for that sprint, and we're doing sprint planning, right? We'll pull things in. Oop, okay, we as a team are gaining understanding of it. We're planning it to get all of that sort of thing, right? And so it works for them, but that's because Craig's kind of.
I guess.
We're not doing it, and I had so much pushback, so much. Right, right. This is not how we've done this before. This is not how you use Jira. It's like, maybe it should be how we use Jira. Let's try it out. Let's run an experiment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And we did it for the first sprint, and everybody went, oh, that was nice. Oh, wasn't it? We didn't watch poor Michelle, our Scrum Master, struggle while typing.
Straight that way.
I know. No. What I meant to say was this. And then the person gets frustrated, and it's
Or
like,
if you transpose and they're, like, okay,
Yeah.
thank you, QA person, correcting me.
right, and you can never, spell properly when people are watching you type, so.
And our approach is we give them a laundry list of experiments that we think would help them improve their Scrum, improve their lesson, improve their product discovery. They choose which experiments sound good to them. And then like using Miro for sprint planning or any of these different changes, they picked every single one of these changes. We didn't force any of the changes on. So I think that was one of the leading success factors is just letting them choose their
Let
experiment.
them have the autonomy. We
Yeah.
keep saying,
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
experts, we'll shine the light on what we think could help, but you don't have to do
Right
it.
versus zone.
Yep.
we all read the book from Daniel Pink, right? On drive and motivation. It's like,
Exactly.
I'll forget the autonomy, mastery, purpose.
For purpose.
Why? Yeah, and so give those teams that autonomy, and that doesn't mean just, it does mean how we're going to do it. And it means also how we're going to work together, right? It's their retrospective. It's
Right.
their improvements to make them work better. It's not the organization. I mean, you hope that they're acting in good faith in the organization itself, but generally when you have happy employees, you have amazingly happy customers.
Yep, absolutely.
So many studies on that.
That's so true.
Anything else interesting in here?
Bill just commented about.
Go Ash. Nice.
Bill, where are you? Where miss you?
What was his comment?
Hey fellas, I was just saying, because for everybody on the line who doesn't know, I'm in an adjacent group to the group they worked with. So they were working with senior community care. I'm working with a group that's actually doing less huge. And we had that, David, to your point about AHA. I actually was in a meeting on Tuesday where I basically was like, no, yeah, all the product folks need access to both of the tools, so there is no wall. So as I told them, I was like, look, we don't want to flick boogers back at each other, back and forth. We want to make sure that we're all riding on the same, we're all riding the same flow of the work. And they acquiesced, but it's interesting because it really took kind of a combined product and engineering effort. I'm the head of engineering there. And so, but by doing that, we advocated and we're like, yeah, it's worth the money. It's totally worth the money to not have that wall.
Right, transparency.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like, I look at, like consulting companies like ours, we have Salesforce in there. It's like, why don't like lots of people have access to it? It just makes sense. Okay, if there's some data in there that needs to be secured, okay, fine, do that, right? So, but even still, I look at Gen Z and their movement towards, salary transparency. It's like, okay, well, we're really not going to be protecting that in 50 years. It'll just be common knowledge, right? We'll just share it. It's like, David, you're being underpaid, right? Here's what I'm being paid. Doing the same job. And that's a cool conversation to have, right? I mean, if you're a Gen Z person, you're already having that conversation. And your employer hates you. And they want to fire you.
Where's the job?
Yeah. So. And then,
Did you, with this project or program, product, whichever we're calling it right now, did you have, so I work in information security, right? So were you having to deal with any of that as part of the scope of this project, or was that like a whole other?
I mean,
Security and information privacy and all that stuff, is that a whole other
I
layer or
think
other?
within the group that we were working with, the PII and all of that sort of stuff was really taken care of inside of the platform itself. And so they didn't really have to worry too much about those sorts of things.
Awesome.
Yeah, the other group that I'm
That's
working,
huge.
yeah, the other group that I'm working with, we had to care about everything because we were building a platform from scratch. Right,
So the
and-
compliance and the.
Well, and it's regulated data by FINRA and SEC.
Right.
So,
Or
well, and it
SOC
was SOC
or
2,
PCI or-
type 2, ISO 27001,
All the other things I don't know.
all of that. Yeah.
Got
At
it.
least we're not doing
I
this.
know, healthcare company, not easy. I'm
Yeah.
sure.
We had, no joke, we still do 4 separate security consultancies advising us. Because, yeah, that's that much paranoia. Now, granted, I understand it, right? I understand the client set, and it's a very unique client set that knowing compensation is not helpful for pretty much most people. So, and some would say it's a national security risk. That's why it's protected, but that's a whole different, whatever we call it, conspiracy theory. There you go. Yeah, it's just like,
That's pretty accurate.
I know. It's like, okay, people, the world's not gonna shut down.
Thank you very much. I got out online too. Awesome stuff. I was grinning back there from ear to ear, really. making it come to life and all the things that we know and hear about, but like you say, gelling them. And thank you guys for the participation online. Our next event is on the 21st of September. Look for more details coming.
Yes.
Yes. So
Thanks for having
again,
us.
thank you very much. This is cool to see how it really can work, if you will.
And then the next one, that's the Jason and
I
Ian,
think
right?
that's what
Yeah,
we
yeah,
wanted to confirm.
Yep,
So, yeah,
yep, that's Jason and Ian. So
Yeah.
I think I have a chat with them tomorrow or next Tuesday
perfect.
to finalize that. But that's basically innovation, but it's from a very, very different angle. So they're a little out there, which I love.
Well, you guys have so many real life experience action items for us, so love it.
Cool.
New vocabulary too, which I always
Yeah.
love. Yeah,
Yeah.
A lot of good questions too.
yes, exactly.